slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast, I can roast, I can...
The man behind the name, Louis Chevrolet's humble beginnings. Before Chevrolet was an automotive legend, it was simply a surname, one that belonged to a Swiss-born racing driver and mechanic named Louis Chevrolet. Born in 1878 in La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland, Louis grew up in a working-class family. His father was a watchmaker, and young Louis developed a fascination with all things mechanical. When the family moved to France and later to Montreal, Canada, Louis found work fixing bicycles and eventually automobiles. By the time he reached New York in the early 1900s, his skills had caught the attention of major players in the automobile scene. He quickly rose to prominence not as an engineer, but as a fearless, charismatic race car driver. Known for his daring driving and deep knowledge of mechanics, Louis became a sensation in early American racing circles. But racing was just one chapter. Louis had a dream to design and build his own car, a car that combined European performance with American practicality, a car that bore his name. Enter Durant, partnership, power, and the birth of Chevrolet. In 1911, Louis Chevrolet's path crossed with a man who would change the course of his life, William C. Durant. Durant, the ousted founder of General Motors, saw an opportunity in the rising popularity of automobiles. He also saw something else, Louis Chevrolet's fame and expertise. The two men partnered to form the Chevrolet Motor Car Company. The very first model, the Chevrolet Series C Classic 6, was released in 1913. It was fast, stylish, and far more luxurious than Ford's stripped-down Model T. It didn't take long for the Chevrolet name to make waves. Durant, always the shrewd businessman, began using Chevrolet's profits to buy up shares of General Motors, eventually regaining control of GM by 1916. But all was not well behind the scenes. Louis Chevrolet was an idealist. He wanted perfection. He envisioned high-performance vehicles, ones that would dominate on the racetrack and in the hearts of car lovers. Durant, on the other hand, was focused on mass production and profit. He wanted affordable cars for the American public. The two clashed often and bitterly. Finally, in 1915, Louis had enough. He sold his shares in the company and walked away, forever separating himself from the brand that bore his name. It would be one of the costliest decisions in business history. A name that rose while its founder fell. After Louis' departure, Chevrolet continued to soar. Under Durant's leadership and later GM's centralized power, Chevrolet expanded rapidly. By 1918, Chevrolet had officially merged with General Motors and became its flagship brand. The 1920s and 30s brought in models like the Capital and the Master Deluxe. Chevrolet positioned itself as the everyman's car, reliable, stylish, and within reach. It was Ford's fiercest competitor and eventually overtook Ford in annual sales. By the mid-20th century, Chevrolet wasn't just a car brand, it was a cultural icon. The Corvette, launched in 1953, became America's sports car. The Bel Air defined 1950s suburbia. And the Impala, a household name across generations. Songs were written about Chevys. Teenagers dreamed of their first one. Families depended on them. The logo became synonymous with pride, freedom, and the American way. But Louis Chevrolet never saw any of it. After leaving the company, Louis returned to what he loved, racing and engineering. He worked for a number of small companies, including the Stutz Motor Company, and even started another venture with his brothers called Frontenac Motor Corporation. But none of it could match the success of Chevrolet. Without his GM shares, he missed out on the billions the company would generate. Worse, the Great Depression crushed his remaining ventures. In his later years, Louis worked as a mechanic at a Chevrolet plant, watching cars with his name roll off the line, knowing he no longer had any part in them. He died in 1941, nearly penniless, and was buried in an unmarked grave in Indianapolis. Chevrolet's glory years and gradual decline. While Louis Chevrolet faded into obscurity, his namesake flourished, at least for a while. The 1950s through the 1970s were Chevrolet's golden years. It was the top-selling brand in America, and GM was the largest automaker in the world. Chevy's marketing slogans like, "See the USA in your Chevrolet," and "Like a Rock," became part of American pop culture. But trouble was brewing. In the 1970s, the oil crisis changed everything. Gas prices skyrocketed, and consumers began favoring smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda entered the US market with reliable, economical models, and American manufacturers were caught off guard. Chevrolet struggled to keep up. Quality slipped. Design stagnated. Once proud models became outdated. The company tried to respond with smaller cars like the Vega and Citation, but they were plagued with problems. The 1980s and 90s brought more competition, internal confusion, and eroding brand loyalty. While GM as a whole continued to dominate, cracks began to show. Foreign brands were taking more market share, and Chevy's innovation lagged behind. Then came the 2008 financial crisis. GM was hit hard, so hard it filed for bankruptcy. Decades of mismanagement, bloated operations, and poor strategic planning had brought the giant to its knees. Chevrolet, once the crown jewel, was now a shadow of its former self. Thanks to a government bailout, GM survived, and Chevrolet endured, but the scars remained. The tragedy behind the triumph. The story of Chevrolet is ultimately one of contrasts. On one side, it's a tale of massive success, of a brand that defined a century of American culture, from racetracks to drive-ins. On the other side, it's a heartbreaking reminder of how visionaries can be left behind by the very empires they create. Louis Chevrolet gave the world his name, his talent, and his legacy. In return, he lived in the shadow of the success he had helped create, never receiving the wealth, recognition, or security that should have been his. His tragic story is one that repeats often in the business world. The dreamer builds, the investor profits, the visionary sacrifices, the system wins. It's a cautionary tale, but also an inspiring one. Because Louis Chevrolet did leave a mark, a massive one. Every time someone says Chevy, they're echoing the name of a man who dared to dream and built something immortal. But perhaps the most powerful part of Louis Chevrolet's story is not the tragedy, but the legacy. Despite the losses he suffered, he never stopped innovating. He returned to his roots, working in small garages, building race cars, and continuing to push the limits of engineering. Fame and fortune may have eluded him, but purpose never did. He remained a craftsman to the end, guided by passion more than profit. The Chevrolet brand today stands as a monument to more than just cars. It's a symbol of American grit, bold dreams, and the complicated roads that entrepreneurs travel. It reminds us that success is rarely simple. It's built on the backs of those willing to risk everything, even when the rewards go elsewhere. Louis Chevrolet died in near poverty, but he died a pioneer, and pioneers are never forgotten. His name lives on, etched in chrome, carved into emblems, and remembered by millions every time they start their engines. So the next time you pass a Chevy on the road, take a second to think about the man behind it all. His story may be tragic, but his impact is everlasting. And in the world of legends, that's the kind of victory that truly matters. The story of Chevrolet isn't just about cars, it's about people, about how ambition can create legends, and how history sometimes forgets the names that made it all possible. Louis Chevrolet may not have died rich, but his legacy roars down highways and city streets to this day. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you the real stories behind the brands that shaped our world. and the people who paid the price for greatness. Tell us in the comments, what legendary brand or visionary should we explore next? Your curiosity drives our next story,